Throughout this series, we have made several references to the axiom, as above, so below. In this episode, we'll dive deeper into its meaning and elaborate more on its significance. That said, what is the relationship between the macrocosm and the microcosm? If everything is a part of a whole, then what accounts for the distinctions we perceive? Science is discovering there is a structural order to the universe that is mirrored in all living systems, from atoms to stars and cells to galaxies. And consciousness exists at every level. While science is steadily uncovering the electrical nature of the human being, the way in which the brain and nervous system, the heart and the blood are all powered by electrical processes, a hiatus remains in understanding how the human being is electrically connected to their environment. We touched on this in a prior episode. Yet if this hiatus were to be bridged, our potential role as a conscious electrical intermediary between the subhuman and superhuman kingdoms would begin to reveal itself. When finally admitted entrance, the realization that a cosmic bloodstream circulates throughout all that lives and breathes will help to transfer that age-old notion of the brotherhood of man from mere romanticism to a hard scientific fact. It's now time to dive into the cosmic bloodstream on this episode of The Electric Bridge. Welcome to episode 4 of The Electric Bridge. We're going to begin with a quote from Helena Blavatsky, the author of The Secret Doctrine, on the way in which the universe initiates and coordinates its building processes. By the radiant light of the universal magnetic ocean, whose electric waves bind the cosmos together, and in their ceaseless motion penetrate every atom and molecule of the boundless creation. Alone, she says, the study of this agent, which is the divine breath, can unlock the secrets of psychology and physiology of cosmological and psychological phenomena. To begin unlocking these secrets, then, science will first discover the underlying electric currents that circulate throughout the whole of manifested existence. And indeed, leading plasma physicists are already revealing the lowest aspects of this through their realization that electromagnetic currents pervade the vast, seemingly empty reaches of outer space. When this truth is acknowledged and accepted into mainstream science, the fact that the blood of all living organisms begins its cycle as a precipitation from a universal circulating flow of electric waves will become a more credible hypothesis. Tentative recognitions in this direction have in fact already been made, but their significance has yet to be fully appreciated. It was a moment of outstanding intuition that, in the 1920s, led the industrial chemist Irving Langmuir to coin the term plasma for the electrified gases he was researching and which proliferate in interstellar space. He noted that these gases carry ions and electrons, similar to the way blood plasma carries red and white corpuscles. Both plasma in space and plasma in the blood are, in effect, electrified fluids carrying both energy and various substances from one region to another. The plasma physicist Hannes Alfvén remarked that in the Earth's magnetosphere, there are thin, rather stable current layers which separate regions of different magnetization, density, and temperature. It is difficult to avoid the conclusion that similar phenomena also exist in more distant regions. This is bound to give space a general cellular structure, or more correctly, a cell wall structure. As the ageless wisdom regards space as an entity, the discovery of electrically produced cell walls in space is highly significant. And bringing the thoughts of these two scientists together, we have the premise that through the cellular structure of space runs an arterial flow of electricity, forming, in effect, a huge intergalactic circuit, or cosmic bloodstream. In our little corner of the galaxy, the Sun forms a sub-circuit within this larger galactic circuit, receiving and emitting a flow of charged particles that pour in and out of the polar regions of all the planets, mirroring in the microcosm the way in which the blood cells flow through the heart and to all the various organs of the body. There is a regular circulation of the vital fluid throughout our solar system, of which the Sun is the heart, the same as the circulation of the blood in the human body. During the solar period or life, the Sun rhythmically contracts as the human heart does. Only instead of performing the round in a second or so, it takes the solar blood 10 of its years, and a whole year to pass through its arteries and ventricles before it washes the lungs and passes thence to the great veins and arteries of the solar system. Astronomy knows of the fixed cycle of 11 years when the number of solar spots increases, which is due to the contraction of the solar heart. It is similar to the regular and healthy pulsation of the human heart as the life fluid passes through its hollow muscles. If the human heart could be made luminous and the living, throbbing organ be made visible, so as to have it reflected upon a screen, then everyone would see the sunspot phenomena repeated every second, due to its contraction and the rushing of the blood. There is a clear correspondence between the electric plasma of space and the mammalian bloodstream, for the latter is also essentially an electric phenomena. To quote Helena Blavatsky again, red corpuscles are drops of electrical fluid, the perspiration oozing out of every cell of the various organs, and caused to exude by electrical action. They are the progeny of the photic principle. As of yet, for the most part, this series has only explored the physical etheric level of the human constitution. Let's peer beyond the personality for a moment and glimpse the aforementioned principle as it relates to the human soul. While medical science currently holds that the blood cells are manufactured in the bone marrow, the spleen, liver, and lymph nodes, they are in fact direct precipitations from the soul's vehicle on its own plane. Unevolved life atoms from the vital streams that circulate around the causal body. These pass down through the mental and emotional vehicles to circulate in turn around the etheric body before finally precipitating out of every cell of the various organs of the physical body through electrical action. Here's a symbolic quote to ponder on. Electricity is the ghost or shadow of matter in motion. And behind the blood circulatory system runs an electric current, the interface between our physical and etheric body. Interestingly, scientists appear to be on the verge of discovering how to manipulate matter in such a way that blood can be precipitated from the ethers in the laboratory. Researchers at the University of Manchester have recently developed a new technique that uses electricity to engineer bone marrow. By varying the voltage and using different shapes, cells can be positioned and stacked on top of each other in any pattern. Different electric fields can also be used to attract different types of cells. But most important, all of this is the fact that the cells can be kept alive and active. Dr. Mark said, "We have proven this technique works and have created some very simple structures in the lab. If we can perfect this, then it may be possible to create artificial bone marrow outside of the body and produce any given blood type." Whether this possibility is granted to humanity at its present stage of evolution remains to be seen. But for now, it's interesting to witness this broad spectrum of scientific discovery. At the microcosmic level, there is the blood plasma in our body, inextricably linked with electricity. While at the macrocosmic level, there are plasmas forming high-energy shapes and patterns in deep space. Both kinds of plasma act as transporting agencies and evolve in complex and unpredictable ways through dynamic, interactive behavior. Yet despite this complexity, they are both governed by relatively simple and well-defined laws that we shall now explore. The immediate and striking thought is that the plasma that pervades space, far from being a lifeless and randomly dispersed gas, is more akin to blood plasma, a living element that is purposefully fulfilling a circulatory role within the body of a cosmic entity. Space plasma, as discussed earlier, is but the denser counterpart of this more radiant electrical substance, generally referred to as the ether. And it is this active aspect of the ether that forms the true divine circulatory flow or bloodstream of the unknown cosmic entity. The electric currents that circulate throughout space plasma are simply mirroring the eternal motion of the ether at a denser level of cosmic manifestation. These etheric currents of space are composed chiefly of hydrogen and oxygen, only on a more subtle level. As HPB says, before these gases become what they are in our atmosphere, they are interstellar ether. Hydrogen, a very inflammable gas, and oxygen, which produce combustion, form water, which is one of the forms of primordial force or fire, in a cold or latent and fluidic form. In their higher forms, hydrogen is the firstborn element, most nearly allied to protyle, and oxygen instills the fire of life into the mother by incubation. They are the spirit, the noumenum of that which becomes, in its densest form, oxygen and hydrogen on Earth. As these more subtle forms of hydrogen and oxygen precipitate from the ether, they form a fiery mist or vapor from which is secreted a rarefied form of ozone, presently unknown to chemistry, but regarded by the spiritual initiates as the elixir of life. It is this electrical interaction of this higher form of ozone with physical substance that results in the production of blood. Interestingly, for many years, much claim making has been made about the medical value of the mundane form of ozone that is currently known to science. Some doctors and biochemists believing that it has remarkable healing properties. To date, researchers are still uncertain whether ozone has a natural physiological role, but the instinctual direction of their research is in line with occult teachings. Studies by Dr. Paul Wentworth from the Scripps Research Institute have led many to believe ozone is naturally created in the human being by neutrophils, the most abundant type of white blood cells. If it is confirmed that ozone is indeed produced endogenously by these white blood cells in the human immune system, even skeptics have conceded that this would be of great significance and give merit to the concept of ozone as a medicine. Having briefly explored the watery connection between the ether and the bloodstream, noting that hydrogen and oxygen are the constituent elements of both, it is not surprising that the idea of water was often used to describe the nature of the ether throughout various esoteric traditions. In the Tibetans' words, "We have generated a term we call the ether. Occultly speaking, this is the modern way of expressing the waters of space, which are the waters of desire in which we are immersed." Terms such as the waters of space and the waters of desire are ancient, but effective ways of describing the ether as a creative medium that becomes an active electrical fluid when impregnated by cosmic will and desire. Indeed, we read in Genesis that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and so began the story of creation. Microcosmic man, being made in the image of the macrocosmic man, is also a creative agent, and our will and desire to create is similarly impregnated into our etheric body prior to being electrically precipitated into our bloodstream via the endocrine glands. In fact, 90% of the blood plasma in our body is formed of water, whose constituent elements, hydrogen and oxygen, carry the electric charge of primordial fire, or ether, through which the subjective spiritual self manifests itself in the objective world. The blood is literally the life aspect, red with desire, and the quality of desire that we are unceasingly precipitating into our bloodstream determines the fineness or coarseness of the physical body through which we express ourselves. As the blood is a medium through which our will and desire is translated into active expression, so can a similar process be detailed on the cosmic level. Desire, whether universal or individual, is an animating force, and its presence in the universal ether generates motion and results in creativity of some kind. When the will and desire of cosmic life impregnates the ether, the downward pressure of these cosmic waves fuses specks of ether into electric charges. The cosmic idea is thus propelled into a volatile plasmic state, after which it later settles down to further clothe and conceal itself in a garment of gaseous, liquid, and physical matter. Here we have the four states of matter that give form to an idea on the physical plane and correspond to the classical four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. As explored earlier, the blood is the means through which the will and desire of a human being are carried into active expression on the physical plane. Earlier, we also discussed how human blood originates in the vesture of the soul on its own plane, and which circulates as a stream of unevolved life atoms. Through electrical precipitation, these life atoms pass down into each of our various subtle bodies, circulating in each before finally oozing out of every cell of the various organs of the physical body as drops of electric fluid. Blood is therefore the precipitated life substance of the soul, an electric current that provides the interface between the inner and outer worlds. For as the blood takes on oxygen from the air breathed into the lungs, the subjective and objective worlds meet and interact. And it is at this juncture that a redemptive process occurs. Oxygen in its higher state is a major constituent of the ether, and the ether therefore naturally saturates the air that we breathe. Furthermore, the ether is a recording agent, and just as it carries impressions of its surroundings to the film in a camera, so too it carries them into the lungs to be impressed on the human blood. Fused with these impressions is an account of the person's psychological condition, picked up as the etheric oxygen passes through the human aura. The way that the incarnated human soul interacts with the objective world is therefore recorded on the electric fluid of the blood, and this initiates an alchemical reaction. The red corpuscles are electrically stimulated to the point that in the region of the heart, a number of them are broken up and escape back into the ether, rising up toward the brain and pineal gland. In this etheric condition, these life atoms retrace their journey back through the subjective bodies toward the soul, carrying information of the experiences undergone like tiny magnetic storage disks that we associate with computer technology. A portion of the life atoms of the soul's vesture are now a little more evolved, the experience gained ready to be built into it as quality and capacity, just as human blood builds and qualifies the human body. Thus do our spiritual and physical vehicles evolve together via an electric bridge, each reflecting the other more faithfully in terms of quality and capacity as evolution proceeds. The recording ability of the blood, its capacity to carry information, may be scientifically confirmed sooner rather than later, for blood plasma is 90% water, and as some scientists have already acknowledged, water has memory. In fact, the memory of water arises from its association with the ether, both of which are constituted of hydrogen and oxygen in different vibratory states, as noted earlier. The recording nature of the ether is therefore naturally reflected in its lower counterpart, water. It was Jacques Benveniste who first proposed that water is capable of retaining a memory of substances once dissolved in it in order to explain the purported therapeutic powers of homeopathic remedies. These remedies are prepared by diluting solutions to such a high degree that no trace of the original substance remains in each final preparation. Interestingly, incessant shaking of the water at each stage of a serial dilution is deemed necessary for an effect to actually occur. This may be due to the resulting vitalization of some of the hydrogen and oxygen, the memory or information contained in the water thereby being raised into the etheric state where it gains potency. The power of homeopathic remedies may be greater not because there is less of the remedy in the water, but because it has had its vibration raised into the etheric state, the source of power and vitality. The role of the homeopath himself may also be a factor in the preparation of these remedies through the interplay of their own etheric body with the surrounding ether, hence the reason that it can so often not work at all. Another reason being the difficulty in diagnosing the cause of illness and the particular etheric ailment within the person whom they're trying to cure. Let's now return to the earlier mentioned idea that water has memory. Because of its association with the ether, the memory of water can be electromagnetically transferred from one location to another, as Jacques Benaveste discovered. There is currently a growing amount of research into the electronic memory of water, such as that carried out by Dr. Lee Lorenzen. His work appears to demonstrate that beneficial information and frequencies can be electrically imprinted into clusters of water molecules, which then have positive influence on metabolic processes. This is a controversial area of investigation, but nevertheless interesting to monitor from the electric bridge perspective. One of the most intriguing is the purported effect of human thoughts and emotions on water, as demonstrated by the late Dr. Emoto, who exposed water in glasses to different types of words, pictures, or images with different intentions, and then froze the water and examined the resulting crystals with microscopic photography. If supported by mainstream science, this would be a powerful testimony to the plan of love and light based on divine geometry. When the current research into the memory of water is examined in the light of the ageless wisdom, we are reminded of the axiom, as mentioned before, as above, so below. For related to the memory of water and the bloodstream is the whole memory of nature, referred to in esoteric teachings as the Akashic records. This is the functional and psychological record of Earth's evolutionary history, including all that lives upon it. The location of these records seems ambiguous in different texts and is often misinterpreted, possibly because they have more than one location. The memory of nature is impressed upon the substance of Akasha, the ethereal waters of space, the highest and purest spiritual substance or ether of each of the subjective planes or worlds. Or as we described in the last episode, upon the first subplane of each plane. At these levels, the atomic lives that reside there are of such caliber that they can also be used by the spiritual self or soul as so-called permanent atoms, having the capacity to store all of the experiences and knowledge acquired in the chain of worlds into which it periodically incarnates. To summarize what has been shared here, the workings of the cosmic bloodstream rests upon the relationship between ether and water, as discussed earlier, and the way in which the great electrical life Fohat works through it. A beautiful symbol of this relationship can be seen in the mysterious phenomenon of floating water bridges that can be induced by an electric current. Just as electricity can activate water into forming bridges on the physical plane, so too can it form electric bridges in the ether, the higher counterpart of water. Channels of communication are thereby formed between the various planes and subplanes of the solar system for mutual exchange of redemptive information. When high voltage is applied to distilled water filled in 2 glass beakers, which are in contact, a stable water connection forms spontaneously, giving the impression of a floating water bridge. At the beginning of the 20th century, mainstream science abandoned the concept of the ether as predicted by Helena Blavatsky, who in 1888 warned that scientists could not disregard it without incurring the risk of pulling down the pillars of the Temple of Science and getting buried under its roof. The reinstatement of the ether is highly necessary for theoretical physics to emerge from its current condition, as its vision and understanding of the universe is obscured more than ever by abstract mathematical models rooted in general relativity and warped space-time. In contrast, the concept of the ether is a simplifying, synthesizing factor, which points toward a living universe whose electric forces circulate throughout the whole as a cosmic bloodstream. All that live and move and have their being within this stream, from gods to atoms, are ideas in motion, organizing and building matter into temporary forms through which the spirit can objectively express itself. The esotericist regards themselves as a constructive cell in the divine circulatory flow. Through certain types of meditation and the creation of thought forms of light, love, and power, their own physical blood is electrically energized within this greater logoic bloodstream, and this process of redemption, individual and planetary, is accelerated. This is all the more potent when a group of people comes together in meditation, united by a shared vision. Ideas and qualities of a similar vibratory frequency precipitate from the group's soul and literally circulate throughout the blood of each member. A process of group redemption thus occurs, similar to that described in relation to the individual. Some of the atomic fire of the physical plane matter, an aspect of the Kundalini force, enters the bloodstream of the group through the breath of each member and mixes with the qualities and ideas that are impressed upon the blood from the inner planes. Some of the blood is thus transmuted and, in its etherealized state, rises toward the group's soul, infused with the fiery essence of redeemed atomic matter. The circulation of group energy proceeds, and where the synthesizing power of vision is strong enough, the group persists as a permanent subjective entity. United by shared qualities, the group is synthesized into an organism, each member becoming a blood brother in the highest sense of the term, preparing the group for the second stage of meditation, the projection of the Antakarana toward the spiritual hierarchy. An electric bridge is thus erected between the two kingdoms. Spiritual information can now be transmitted and received through the planetary ethers. The role of an esoteric group is then to work with this spiritual information to release enriching potencies into the divine circulatory flow on the lowest levels of manifestation. This is esoteric science and practiced by the initiates, the application and transmission of the electric forces of the 7 rays of life into the world. As noted in the beginning of this episode, the electrical nature of the human being is being steadily uncovered by science, and the way in which the human being is electrically connected to their environment is on the verge of recognition. With each discovery of the amazing electrical constitution and interaction of all manifested life, what currently seems as magic, mystery, and myth will be included in the domain of orthodox science in the not-too-distant future. Part of this was demonstrating the recording ability of blood and the memory of water by recognizing that both plasma in space and plasma in our blood are essentially electrical fluids carrying various substances. It is then but a logical step forward to consider how one can consciously participate in the redemption of matter through what they transmit through the circulatory system of the Logos. We hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and in episode 5 of The Electric Bridge, we'll explore the secrets of the carbon world and the geometric symmetry of our various bodies and their connection with the classical elements of alchemy, while also looking at both the psychological and physiological effects of our breath on the environment. So be sure to subscribe for all future updates, and if you're feeling generous, consider contributing to our Patreon, as it greatly supports our work. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the other side of the Electric Bridge.